St. Darius Hospital had always been a place of healing, a place where life began and ended. Its long, sterile corridors, with their white walls and the faint scent of antiseptic, were like any other hospital. Nurses, doctors, patients, just another day. And Nurse Julia was no exception. A woman of quiet efficiency, she had been working here for years. It was an old hospital, sure, but Julia didn't mind. There was something comforting about the familiar beeping machines, the rustling of paperwork, and the occasional whir of the overhead lights. She'd walked these halls so many times, they felt like home. As she passed the morgue one afternoon, the door slightly ajar, she felt a brief but inexplicable shiver down her spine. But she brushed it off. Just another day, she told herself. But it wasn't. Something was waiting. Something was just about to be unleashed. The first sound was barely a whisper, so soft it could have been the wind or the hum of a nearby machine. But that night, when Julia walked down the hall, it happened again. A muffled scream. She froze, the kind of sound that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. It came from the direction of the morgue. At first, she tried to dismiss it. Maybe it's just the pipes, she thought, or a piece of equipment malfunctioning. But there was no mistaking it this time. The cry came again, louder, desperate, like someone was calling out for help, but unable to be heard. Julia's heart raced. She stood still, her breath catching in her throat. The hallway felt different now, heavy, almost suffocating. She couldn't ignore it anymore. The morgue door was locked. No one had entered in hours, and yet the noise came from within, as if someone or something was trapped inside. As the days went by, the noise became a constant. Every night, Julia could hear it, the muffled cries from the morgue, like the building itself was alive with pain. At first, she thought she was just imagining things. But then, others began to notice too. A nurse mentioned hearing strange sounds at night. An orderly talked about feeling an inexplicable chill in the air whenever they passed by the morgue. Julia couldn't stop herself. She had to know what was going on. She couldn't just ignore it, not after everything she'd heard, and certainly not after that chilling scream that rattled her bones. Night after night, she searched the hospital records. Old files, forgotten histories of patients who had passed away in the hospital. She visited the basement, the forgotten corners of the building, searching for clues. One evening, she stumbled across an old photograph, faded, yellowed. It was a picture of the hospital staff from decades ago. And in the background, there was something strange, something wrong. A figure in a hospital gown, standing alone in the corner of the frame. No one recognized them. It was as though they had never existed. She couldn't shake it. Her obsession grew. She began speaking to the few elderly patients still residing in the hospital, asking about the building's past. But every question seemed to lead to a dead end, as if the truth was deliberately hidden. That night, Julia couldn't take it anymore. She had to know what was going on. With the flashlight clutched tightly in her hand, she approached the morgue. Her breath came in short bursts, and as the door creaked open, a chill ran through her. Inside, the air was unnaturally cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the hospital hallway. Shadows loomed over the rows of cold metal drawers. But it wasn't just the cold. There was a presence, a palpable feeling of something. Julia's eyes scanned the room, trying to shake the sense that she was being watched. She moved closer to the back wall and noticed something strange. A crack in the plaster, almost invisible, except for a faint draft that seemed to blow from within. Heart pounding, she pressed her fingers against it. The wall shifted, and before she could react, a hidden door swung open. A hidden room. The air grew colder still. Julia stepped inside, her pulse quickening. And that's when she saw them. Figures, pale, translucent, their faces twisted in agony. They moved slowly, their bodies flickering in and out of existence. And their eyes, those eyes, empty and soulless. But there was something in them, a pleading, a desperation. They were trapped, forgotten. Julia's mind raced. What was this place? These souls, these ghosts, had been forgotten, neglected, left to wander for eternity. They had died without care, trapped between this world and the next. But as Julia backed away in fear, something began to change. One of the spirits stepped forward. It was different from the others, calmer, almost peaceful. The others surrounded it, almost as if they were in reverence. It turned its eyes toward Julia, and for the first time, she saw a face that wasn't twisted in agony. It was serene, almost inviting. "Stay," it whispered, its voice cold as death itself. "Stay with us." Julia froze, her heart thudding in her chest. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The room seemed to close in on her, and she felt the temperature drop even further. The other spirits began to move toward her, their cold hands reaching out, their eyes pleading. And then the one who had spoken stepped forward again, a faint smile curling its lips. "You don't have to go. Stay with us, forever." Julia never returned to work the next morning. The hospital staff assumed she'd taken a leave, but something was different. The morgue, which had been a place of quiet and dread, now stood eerily silent. The whispers, gone. But the strange coldness remained. It wasn't until a few days later that a janitor discovered the hidden room. The morgue door was ajar, but inside there was nothing but emptiness. No ghosts, no spirits, just the cold, sterile silence of an abandoned room. Some say Julia's spirit is still there, trapped. She couldn't escape, not when some of them wanted her to stay. Some say she's helping them now, caring for the souls that were forgotten. Others say she is still waiting for someone else to join her. And if you ever find yourself alone in St. Darius, walking those long, empty halls, listen carefully. You might hear a faint whisper, a cry from the shadows. And if you listen too long, well, you may just find yourself a part of the story too. The story begins calmly, almost mundanely, to create a sense of normalcy. Dr. Simon, a young, eager doctor, has just accepted his first night shift at St. Augustine's Hospital, a place renowned for its age and tragic history. The hospital, nestled on the outskirts of town, is known for its old architecture, rusted gates, and long abandoned wings. There's a strange but intriguing aura to the building. Old photographs of past doctors and nurses line the hallways, a few of which look a little too old, a little too unsettling. Despite the whispers from staff and locals about the hospital's haunted past, Simon brushes them off, convinced they are merely stories meant to spook the new guy. After all, the world is full of legends. As he walks through the dimly lit hallways, Simon feels a shiver crawl up his spine, but he chalks it up to the hospital's eerie atmosphere, the flickering fluorescent lights, and the cool, oppressive air of the place. Things start off small. A faint creaking sound in the corner of his eye, a flickering light above the reception desk, whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Simon tries to ignore them, keeping focused on his duties, but it becomes harder with each passing minute. As the night deepens, the feeling of being watched grows stronger. The hospital is nearly empty, save for the occasional staff member, yet it feels like something is waiting. When Simon checks in on the ward, he notices an old patient who seems oddly out of place, a woman who looks as if she's been here far longer than she should have. Her name is Lydia. She's aged, frail, and yet there's an unsettling sharpness in her eyes. She tells Simon cryptic things about the hospital's history, about how the spirits trapped here never leave, that some of them are still waiting, lurking in the shadows. At first, Simon writes it off as dementia, or perhaps just an elaborate tale. but he can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. As he proceeds down the hall, he hears strange noises. Footsteps behind him when no one is there. A sudden drop in temperature. Simon's curiosity grows stronger as he starts to notice more peculiarities around the hospital. The other patients' stories are beginning to overlap. Many speak of strange sights and sounds. Some even report seeing shadowy figures moving through the wards. Simon digs into the hospital's history, uncovering unsettling records of accidents, disappearances, and unexplained deaths. Some of the older nurses hint at a long-standing curse, a powerful entity that seems to hold sway over the building. One night, Simon gets the nerve to speak to Lydia again. She tells him that she is the last of a long line of spirits tied to the hospital, descendants of the original founders who suffered horrible fates. She claims that the spirits of the hospital are restless, and it's only a matter of time before Simon becomes a part of the curse. Her warnings feel less like ramblings and more like desperate pleas for help. Simon finds himself drawn into a growing obsession. He can't leave the mystery alone. He starts researching the tragic history of the hospital at all hours, even reaching out to former staff members who had worked there during the darker times. But the more he learns, the more he feels the weight of something much more sinister pressing down on him. The night grows darker and colder, and Simon's exhaustion begins to take its toll. He walks through the empty halls of the hospital, only to be greeted by the unsettling feeling that he's not alone. As he approaches the intensive care unit, something feels off. A cold gust of wind cuts through the hallway, though all the windows are closed. The lights flicker once more. Then he hears it, the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open, followed by a low, guttural whisper. "It's too late now. You're one of us now." Simon whips around, but no one is there. The air feels thicker, as though something is watching him from the shadows. His heart pounds in his chest as he approaches a patient's room, where Lydia had been earlier. As he steps inside, he sees something that chills him to his core. Lydia's body, lifeless in her bed, her eyes wide open as if she had never left. The room is eerily silent, except for the soft sound of whispering voices that seem to come from all directions. Suddenly, shadows shift and writhe around him, forming figures, ghostly apparitions with hollow eyes and twisted faces. They are the spirits Lydia spoke of, each one a tragic soul trapped within the hospital walls. Simon is frozen, too afraid to move, yet somehow compelled to stay. The spirits surround him, each whispering stories of their untimely demise, of betrayal, of death, until they all merge into one horrifying figure. As Simon stares at the figure, everything begins to make sense. The curse, the strange occurrences, the feelings of dread. It was all connected to him. He realizes with horror that he is the one who unwittingly triggered the curse. His family has a long history with St. Augustine's Hospital, a lineage of doctors who, unbeknownst to him, had been part of the founding team that began the hospital's twisted existence. The spirits reveal their true nature. They are not just patients, but part of the very foundation of the hospital, their lives intertwined with Simon's bloodline. Lydia, the last of the spirits, was never meant to die. She was meant to carry the burden of the curse until the next in line arrived, and now Simon is that next person. As the realization sets in, Simon's world begins to unravel. The hospital has never been a place of healing. Its true purpose was to trap those connected to it in an endless cycle of torment. The spirits aren't merely haunting the place, they're keeping him there, making sure that he will never leave. Simon's heart races as he realizes the terrible truth. The hospital itself is a living entity, feeding off the souls of the trapped. The curse is not just a story. It's a binding contract, one that Simon is now irrevocably tied to. he has become a part of the hospital, its spirit entwined with his own. His future is sealed. But as the spirits close in around him, one final whisper from Lydia reaches his ears. This is only the beginning. The camera lingers on Simon's face, wide-eyed and terrified, as the figures of the spirits close in on him, their hollow gazes piercing his soul. The last thing the audience hears is the soft sound of a door creaking, then the eerie silence that follows. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience in suspense.